It's Wednesday, 9 October. Welcome to the President's Daily Brief. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. Let's get briefed. We'll begin with a stark warning from the head of Britain's MI5 intelligence agency, who said that Russia and Iran are working overtime to create chaos across Europe through sabotage missions and attacks on dissidents. The intelligence chief also cautioned that a resurgent Qaeda and Islamic State pose a growing terrorism threat to the continent. And later in the program, an update on Israel's expected retaliation against Iran, while sources say that Israel will probably not target Iran's nuclear program. Israeli leaders are, reportedly, keeping their U.S. counterparts in the dark, or at least so they say. Then, we'll turn our attention to the war in Ukraine, where intelligence suggests that North Korean troops are fighting for Russia and have been killed in combat, and that the Hermit Kingdom will likely deploy additional forces to the Russian military. And in today's back of the brief, the bromance between Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, well, it continues to blossom, with the little dictator sending the Russian despot a birthday note, calling Putin his closest comrade. Oh, that's sweet. And gushing that their alliance has made them, quote, invincible. I don't think he knows what that word means. But first, today's PDB Spotlight. I want to begin today with a warning from Director General Ken McCallum of MI5, and that's the UK's security service, who revealed in a speech on Tuesday that Kremlin intelligence agencies are on a, quote, sustained mission to generate mayhem across the UK and Europe. McCallum's speech revealed that state-orchestrated threats have surged, with MI5's caseload of such investigations increasing by nearly half in the past year. Now, Russia and Iran have increasingly turned to low-level criminals to execute dirty work operations, such as arson, sabotage, and attacks on dissidents. McCallum stressed that Russia's use of cyber attacks and criminal proxies escalated following the expulsion of 750 Russian diplomats, who, of course, used to be responsible for executing the dirty work, from Europe after the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, curtailing many direct channels for state espionage. Now, Russia is no stranger to these tactics. The GRU, Russia's military intelligence agency, notorious for covert operations, has long relied on third-party actors, such as criminals, drug traffickers, and proxy groups, to sow chaos. Now, these groups have carried out actions designed to destabilize Europe, such as disrupting arms production and applying pressure on politicians. As McCallum put it, quote, we should expect to see continued acts of aggression here at home, end quote. For some background, cases earlier this year include a London warehouse arson attack, a Berlin factory sabotage, and a spate of attacks in the Baltic states and Eastern Europe. Russia's proxy networks are proving difficult to dismantle, with the intelligence chief describing the rise in attacks as, quote, staggering. Simultaneously, as we've noted recently on the PDB, Iran has been involved in at least 20 assassination plots and attacks against dissidents abroad, particularly in Europe, and that's since 2022. This includes targeting individuals critical of the Iranian regime, such as an Iranian-British journalist who was stabbed in South London back in March. McCallum claimed Iran was behind, quote, plot after plot to sow chaos on British soil. Turning to terrorism, McCallum warned of the growing threat posed by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, particularly in the context of ongoing unrest in the Middle East. While militant violence linked to these groups has not yet materialized on a large scale in the UK, the risk remains significant. The intelligence chief cited an October 2023 incident in northern England where a Moroccan man stabbed a passerby to death in what was described as a revenge for Israeli actions in Gaza. In his speech, McCallum also pointed to the increasing radicalization of young people. McCallum noted that 13% of those under investigation for terrorism-related offenses are under the age of 18. Now, this marks a threefold increase over the past 3 years. McCallum described this, quote, slow burner radicalization, which occurs online, as more insidious and harder to detect. Al-Qaeda is exploiting the conflict in the Middle East to recruit new members in, quote, resumed efforts to export terrorism. Throughout the wide-ranging speech, McCallum painted a sobering picture of the UK and Europe's security environment. The rise in state-sponsored plots and the resurgence of international terrorism have placed significant pressure on the UK's domestic intelligence service. Despite these challenges, MI5 and British police have successfully disrupted 43 late-stage terrorist plots, 43 of them, since March 2017, many of which were in the final stages of planning for mass casualty attacks. McCallum warned Russia and Iran's proxies that those who collaborate with autocratic regimes will face severe consequences, stating, quote, "It's a choice you will regret," end quote. All right, coming up after the break, an update on Israel's expected retaliation against Iran. While sources say Israel will probably not target Iran's nuclear program, reportedly Israeli leaders are keeping their U.S. counterparts in the dark. Then, we'll turn our attention to the war in Ukraine, where intelligence suggests that North Korean troops fighting for Russia have been killed in combat. I'll have those stories when we come back. Welcome back to the PDB. I want to return to our coverage of the Middle East, where the focus, obviously, remains on Israel and their expected retaliatory response to Iran's massive missile attack last week. U.S. officials say Israeli leaders have likely decided on a strategy, but they're keeping allies in the dark. Representatives for the Biden administration have been holding discussions with their Israeli counterparts since last Tuesday's attack, which saw 181 Iranian ballistic missiles rain down on various parts of Israel. While U.S. officials have offered to support Israel through intelligence sharing or even U.S. airstrikes on Iranian interests, Israeli leaders have not yet tipped their hand on how they will proceed, and that's according to sources who spoke exclusively with NBC News. U.S. officials said that Israel's reticence to provide a concrete timeline, along with their reluctance to commit to giving the U.S. advance warning of their plans, have diminished the possibility that the U.S. will directly participate in Israel's response. The unnamed sources said it's more likely that the U.S. will perhaps sit this one out and show their support for Israel by organizing harsh sanctions against the Islamic regime. Ooh, and maybe they'll write a memo, too. The lack of detailed communication is reportedly exasperating tensions between leaders in Jerusalem and the Biden administration. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was reportedly already furious that Israel did not inform the Pentagon of their plans to assassinate the now-deceased Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, back on 27 September. Austin and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant last spoke on Sunday, where they reportedly touched on Israel's potential response options, which appear likely to focus on Iranian military and intelligence infrastructure, air defenses, and oil facilities. But again, Gallant did not specify timing or which option was the most likely. But Gallant's schedule this week, well, it may provide a clue. He was scheduled to travel to the U.S. for a sit-down with Austin on Wednesday, but that trip was postponed on Tuesday by Prime Minister Netanyahu. While Netanyahu offered no clarification for the cancellation, if they are planning to retaliate this week, well, it makes sense to have the nation's defense minister at home base. As I noted, what the retaliation includes remains to be seen, but it does appear that Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear program may be off the table. Israeli sources told the New York Times on Monday that there are no immediate plans to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Separate sources reiterated that stance to the Jerusalem Post, saying the retaliation will focus on military facilities and intelligence sites and energy infrastructure. As we discussed on the program last week, President Biden and the other leaders of the G7 had already stated their opposition to strikes targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, fearing that it could trigger escalatory attacks between Iran and Israel. Still, Israeli officials say the size of the response will be substantial. And on the Iranian side, their foreign minister reiterated the regime's threat on Tuesday that if Israel mounts a retaliatory attack, quote, "our response will be more powerful." Okay, I want to turn your attention to the battlefields of Ukraine. This is a very interesting story, where North Korean troops are reportedly fighting and dying alongside Russian forces. Correct, North Korean troops in Ukraine fighting alongside Russian troops. South Korea's defense minister responded to reports circulating in Ukrainian media on Tuesday that claims 6 North Korean military officers were killed in a Ukrainian missile attack in the Russian-occupied Donetsk region last week. The South Korean minister called the reports, quote, highly likely, and warned that the Hermit Kingdom will likely deploy additional forces to the war zone in the near future. And that's according to a report from the Moscow Times. The South Korean foreign minister warned, quote, the relations between Russia and North Korea are evolving to be almost as close as a military alliance. As such, more North Korean troops could be deployed in the war, end quote. Russia and North Korea began to rapidly deepen their ties in the wake of the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine back in February of 2022. Moscow has had to increasingly rely on North Korea to restock their dwindling missile supplies and military equipment, with the Hermit Kingdom sending at least 13,000 shipping containers of munitions since the middle of 2022. The Kremlin has in turn traded oil with North Korea to help them bypass international sanctions, while also providing technology assistance regarding their spy satellites and nuclear programs. These dealings culminated in the signing of a landmark mutual defense pact in June, formalizing the role of North Korea as a crucial supply base for Russian military needs. Perhaps feeling a confidence boost, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has since increased their rate of missile tests and escalated his nuclear rhetoric against South Korea and the West. Now, given their role as a weapons supplier, many regional analysts said that sending soldiers to aid Russia's war effort was a logical and expected next step. They also noted that North Korea is keen to give their commanders and soldiers real-world battlefield experience. An analyst at Seoul's Institute for Far Eastern Studies told the Moscow Times, quote, for North Korea, which has supplied Russia with many shells and missiles, it's crucial to learn how to handle different weapons and gain real-world combat experience. This might even be a driving factor behind sending North Korean soldiers to provide them with diverse experiences and wartime training, end quote. Well, look at that. Putin is providing combat internships for Kim Jong-un's soldiers. Now, how thoughtful. And coming up in the back of the brief, the slobbery bromance between Russia's Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, well, it continues to blossom, with the little dictator sending the Russian despot a gushing birthday note. And frankly, who doesn't love to receive a handwritten note these days? It's very touching. I'll be right back. In today's Back of the Brief, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un raised a glass to Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling him, oh, wait for it, his, quote, closest comrade, not once, but twice, in a birthday message on Monday. Apparently, nothing says happy birthday, frankly, like a toast from Pyongyang. As Putin quietly celebrated his 72nd birthday in Moscow, but honestly, he doesn't look a day over 71, it became obvious that his circle of international well-wishers is thinning out. The party just keeps getting smaller. Besides Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko and the, of course, ever-loyal Chechen strongman Ramzan Kadyrov, the most enthusiastic tribute, well, it came from Kim. Kim, ever the romantic, reminisced about their June meeting. This is starting to sound like a Hallmark movie. Saying, quote, I am now recollecting with deep emotion the days when we developed the traditional DPRK-Russia relations into eternal strategic relations, end quote. In other words, hey, Vlad, we're in this until the wheels fall off. Despite rumors about Putin's health, I mean, frankly, he's already outlived the average Russian male by a solid 3 years, Moscow didn't forget the big day. Public celebrations erupted. Oh, they just spontaneously erupted, with Russian nationalists chanting slogans like, quote, God save the Tsar. Meanwhile, Kadyrov poured on the praise, hailing Putin as Russia's, quote, supreme commander-in-chief. Well, that is what he is. Kim, aside from his gushing birthday message, gifted Putin a pair of Punsang hunting dogs, native to North Korea, adding that Putin will lead, quote, great Russia to the road of victory. This is all getting very saccharine. Over the years, these two, meaning Kim and Putin, have exchanged gifts, well, straight out of a evil villain's catalog. drones, a dagger, horses, armored limos. Well, it's the sort of thing that you get a despot who has everything. Their bromance, as we've been tracking here on the PDB, united, of course, by a shared disdain for the West and a mutual need for international relevance, not to mention Putin's insatiable need for more North Korean munitions, hit new highs in June when Putin made a rare visit to North Korea, where they joyrode in each other's limousines, ooh, what fun, signed military pacts, shared a milkshake with 2 straws, and spent a couple hours crafting friendship bracelets while getting jiggy with K-pop. Okay, I made up that last bit. Putin, of course, can't stand K-pop. Everybody knows that. He's, I think, more of a Swiftie. And that, my friends, is the President's Daily Brief for Wednesday, 9 October. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And don't forget what your mother told you. To listen to the show ad-free, become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by simply visiting pdbpremium.com. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back later today with the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.